I paid for my sister's wedding. All of it. $37,000 over 14 months from a savings account I had been building since I was 23 years old. I found the venue. I negotiated the catering contract. I drove 40 minutes each way to the florist 11 separate times. I held my sister's hand when she cried about centerpieces at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. When the groom stood up to give his thank you speech, he looked around that room at 200 people and thanked his parents, his groomsmen, his college roommate who flew in from Portland, his high school football coach who had somehow made the guest list, and a woman named Cheryl from his office who had apparently given him invaluable advice about marriage. He did not say my name. Neither did my sister. I sat at the head table in the dress I had also paid for. Not my own dress, my sister's. The one she had found after 7 appointments at 4 different bridal shops, and which had cost $4,200. And I did not cry. I did not stand up. I did not make a scene. What I did was quieter than that, and the room went completely still when it happened. But before I tell you what I did, I need to tell you the whole story. Because what I did only makes sense if you understand what the 14 months before it looked like. And because I think some of you, the ones who are the reliable ones, the capable ones, the ones who always handle things, will recognize every single part of what I am about to tell you. My name is Meg. I am 31 years old. I am a contracts administrator for a civil engineering firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am precise, organized, and capable, which are qualities that in my family have always been treated less like gifts and more like a natural resource, available, renewable, and free. This is the story of the last time I let that happen. My sister Brianna called me on a Sunday morning in early March, 19 months ago. I was making coffee and reading something on my phone, still in the comfortable inertia of a slow morning when she called. Brianna is 28, 3 years younger than me, and she has a particular quality to her voice when she wants something, a brightness that is slightly more luminous than her regular brightness, like someone has turned a dial up a few degrees. He proposed, she said, before I even finished saying hello. Last night, at the restaurant, at that table by the window, you know the one? He got down on one knee and Meg. I said yes, and the ring is, I need you to see the ring. I was genuinely happy for her. I want to say that first and clearly because the rest of this story could make it seem otherwise, and it would not be true. I loved my sister, and I was happy she was engaged to Ryan, who is a decent man who makes her laugh and takes her feelings seriously and has never, in the 4 years I have known him, been anything but kind. I'm so happy for you, I said, and I meant it completely. Okay, but I need to ask you something, she said, and there it was, the brightness dialing up slightly further. I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about it before you say anything. I poured my coffee. Ask. Mom and Dad can give us some money, but it's not going to be enough. You know what they have. And Ryan's parents, his dad's still dealing with the medical stuff. They can't really contribute. And we want to do this properly, Meg. I don't want something small and sad. I want it to be real. I want it to be the day I actually imagined, and a breath. I know you've been saving. I know you have. The silence between us lasted about 4 seconds. How much do you think you need? I asked. She named a number. It was not a small number. Let me think about it, I said. I know it's a lot, she said. I know, but you're the only one who, you're the only person I would even ask, you know? You're the only one who could actually. I said, let me think about it. I said, not unkindly, okay, she said. Okay, thank you. Just thank you for even considering it. I drank my coffee. I looked out my window at the Sunday morning. I thought about my savings account, which contained, at that time, $44,000, the result of 8 years of careful, consistent work, the foundation of a down payment on the house I had been planning to buy within the next 2 years. I thought about Brianna's voice. The day I actually imagined, I called her back 2 hours later. Okay, I said. I'll help. But I want to be involved in the planning. I'm not just writing checks, I want to understand where the money is going. Of course, she said. Obviously. You'll be like my co-planner, I said. Yes, absolutely. God, Meg, I love you so much. I love you too, I said. I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet. I want to be honest about what I was giving up, not to make myself sound noble, but because I think the specificity of it matters. I had been saving since I was 23, which means 8 years of living carefully in a city where careful living requires real discipline. I had a good salary, but I had also made choices. The apartment that was slightly too small. The car I kept for 6 years passed when I wanted a new one. The vacations I had taken close to home or not at all. The clothes I bought on sale and kept until they were done. I had said no to things I wanted in favor of the slow, patient accumulation of a number in an account that represented something specific. A house, a place of my own, a foundation. That number was going to become my sister's wedding. I did not tell her the full weight of it. I told her I had savings I could draw from and that I was happy to help. I did not sit her down and say, "This is my house down payment. This is 8 years of discipline. This is the thing I have been building toward in the specific private hope of planting myself somewhere permanent before I was 35. I did not say any of that because I did not want her to feel guilty. And because I had made the decision and I wanted to make it cleanly, without resentment, I revised my timeline in my head. I would rebuild. I was 31, I was employed, I was good at saving. It would take longer, but it was possible. This was the calculation I made on that Sunday morning between the first phone call and the second, and it was a real calculation, not a fantasy, and I made it with open eyes. I called my mother that evening. She had already heard from Brianna. "Isn't it wonderful?" my mother said. "They're so happy." "They are," I said. "I'm going to help with the wedding costs. I wanted you to know." "Oh, Meg." Her voice was warm, relieved in a way that told me the financial question had been causing her quiet stress. "That is so generous of you." "I'm glad I can do it," I said. "You've always been the responsible one," she said. "Ever since you were little. We always knew we could count on you." I noted the way this was phrased. "Not you are generous, but you are reliable." As if my giving were less a gift and more an expected output of my personality, a natural consequence of being the responsible one. I noted it, and set it aside, and said goodnight, and went to update my spreadsheet. The 14 months of wedding planning are both the easiest and the hardest part of this story to tell because they were full of small moments that individually seem manageable and collectively were exhausting in a way I am still processing. I found the venue in April, a renovated farm property 40 minutes outside Charlotte that had a barn for the reception and a garden for the ceremony. It was beautiful in the way that places that have been loved for a long time are beautiful. Worn at the edges, honest, full of good light. I visited it twice before showing it to Brianna, who drove out with me on a Wednesday evening and walked through the garden and said, "This is it. This is exactly it," in the voice of someone who has been waiting to say that sentence. The deposit was $4,000. I wrote the check. The catering negotiations took 3 weeks. I am a contracts administrator by profession, which means I know how to read a vendor agreement and how to ask the questions that reveal what is actually being offered versus what sounds like it is being offered. I reviewed 2 catering contracts and pushed back on a service fee that was buried in the second one and got it reduced. Brianna's contribution to this process was sending me pictures of food she liked from Pinterest. I did not say anything about the disproportion. I added everything to the spreadsheet. The florist was a woman named Donna, who was extraordinarily talented and also extraordinarily specific about what she would and would not do, which meant that the 11 visits were necessary rather than optional. Each time I drove out there, I brought updated notes and questions and budget figures. Donna liked me. "You're not like most clients," she said once. "You actually know what you want and you can explain it." I thanked her and thought, I know what my sister wants. These are her flowers, not mine. The dress appointments were a separate category of experience entirely. We went to 4 salons over 6 weeks, with my mother and Brianna's best friend Kayla and me rotating through combinations of presents at each one. Brianna had a clear idea of what she wanted and a talent for falling in love with dresses that were at the top of or slightly above the budget I had communicated. The dress she chose was at a salon in Raleigh that we drove to specifically because she had seen a photo of it online. It was $4,200. When the consultant told her the price, Brianna looked at me. "It's the one," I said. "Get the one." She hugged me in the middle of the salon, right there between the dress racks for a long time. "I'm going to remember this forever," she said. I paid the deposit that afternoon and thought, yes, I hope you do. The invitations, the rehearsal dinner logistics, the hotel room block for out-of-town guests, the transportation arrangements, the day of timeline, all of this lived in my spreadsheet and in my head and in the notes app on my phone and in a 3-ring binder I kept on my desk at home. Ryan's contribution was choosing the band, which he did over one weekend, by attending 2 showcases and sending Brianna videos. It was a good band. I added their contract to the binder. By October, I had spent over $20,000, and there were still 7 months until the wedding. There is a specific moment when a generous thing stops being recognized as generous and starts being treated as normal. And I can tell you almost exactly when it happened in this case. It was November, at a family dinner at my parents' house, the kind of Sunday dinner my mother still insists on when enough family is in town. There were 8 of us, my parents, Brianna and Ryan, my Aunt Susan, my cousin Trish and me. We were talking about the wedding. The topic occupied conservatively 60% of all our family conversations by that point, and someone asked about the catering. Brianna said, "Meg's handling it. She found this amazing company." "And the flowers?" my Aunt Susan asked. "Meg's got a woman she loves. She's incredible." My aunt turned to me with a warm smile. "You are really something," she said. "Brianna is so lucky to have you." I smiled. I thanked her. And then Brianna said in a tone of complete and unconscious ease, "Can you call Donna this week about the centerpiece update? She needs a final answer. Not would you mind. Not I know you've already done so much. Just the request, issued the way you issue a request to someone who handles things, with the implicit confidence that they will handle it because handling things is what they do." I said, "Sure." My mother said, "What would we do without Meg?" And everyone laughed, warmly, and the conversation moved on. And what I noticed, what I filed away in the quiet part of my mind, was that the question was rhetorical. No one actually wondered what they would do without me. No one at that table was sitting with the weight of what it would mean if I stopped. They were not curious about it because it was not a real possibility in their minds. I was a given. After dinner, I helped my mother clear the table and she squeezed my arm and said, "You're doing a beautiful thing for your sister." And I nodded and thought, yes, I know I am, but I noticed that the thing has started to feel less like a gift I am giving and more like a service I am providing. And I am not sure when that happened, and I am not sure if it matters, and I am not sure what I would do with it if it did. I called Donna that week about the centerpieces. Donna said she had been hoping to hear from me. By February, 4 months before the wedding, I had spent $31,000. I am going to tell you what that number meant in practical terms, because I think when people hear a large number they understand it abstractly but not concretely, and the concrete version is important. It meant my savings account, which had been at $44,000 in March, was now at $13,000. It meant that the house I had been planning to buy was no longer within reach on my current timeline. I had gone from being 2 years away to being, realistically, 5 or 6 years away, assuming I continued saving at the same rate and assuming nothing else disrupted that. It meant the emergency cushion I had always maintained was thin enough to make me uncomfortable. I had also spent approximately 300 hours on planning over 14 months, which I tracked not obsessively but factually, the way I track anything. That is the equivalent of 7.5 40-hour work weeks. I tracked it not to present it to anyone, but because I am someone who measures things, and because the measuring felt like the only way to make the invisible visible, at least to myself. I told none of this to my family. I did not tell Brianna the account balance. I did not tell my mother the hours. I did not bring the spreadsheet to Sunday dinner and read from it. I had made a decision to give fully and without condition, and I believed that was the right way to give, and I still believe that. But I also want to be honest. There is a difference between giving without condition and giving without being seen. I had accepted the first. The second was starting to cost me something I had not budgeted for. In February, Brianna and I had a small disagreement, the only real one in the entire planning period, about the rehearsal dinner. She wanted to add 12 people to the guest list, which would push the catering cost up by roughly $2,000. I said we needed to stay within the budget we had set. She said the additional people were important to her. I said I understood that, but the budget was a real constraint, not a suggestion. She was quiet for a moment and then said, "I just feel like at this point, what's $2,000 more dollars?" I looked at her across the coffee shop table where we were sitting. "It's $2,000 more dollars," I said. Something in my voice must have landed differently than usual, because she looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, "but the budget is the budget." She dropped the extra 12 people. She did not ask me again if I was okay. The final total, including the rehearsal dinner and the last round of vendor payments and the wedding favors and the day of transportation, was $37,420. I know this number exactly. I have the spreadsheet. June 14th arrived the way the end of a long project always arrives, with the particular mix of relief and unreality that comes from the thing you have been building toward finally becoming present tense. I was at the venue at 7 in the morning. The ceremony was at 5 in the afternoon. That left 10 hours during which I was, functionally, the on-site coordinator. The person Donna called when she arrived with the flowers and needed to know where to stage everything. The person the catering manager found when he had a question about the timeline. The person the photographer texted when she needed to confirm the shot list. The person who tracked down the missing boutonnieres and communicated with the band about the sound check schedule. I did all of this in the dress I was wearing as maid of honor, a deep blue silk that Brianna had chosen and that I had, yes, also purchased as part of the overall wedding cost. I wore my hair up and my good heels, and I moved through that venue all morning and afternoon with my phone in one hand and my binder under my arm and a communication earpiece that the day of coordinator, who existed primarily to execute the plans I had made, had loaned me. I saw Brianna at noon when I went to the bridal suite to check on her. She was sitting in front of a mirror while someone worked on her hair, and when she saw me in the reflection, she reached back and grabbed my hand and squeezed it hard. "It's really happening," she said. "It's really happening," I said. "I'm shaking." "I know, that's okay, Meg," she squeezed my hand again. "Thank you, for everything, for all of it." "I know," I said. "I know." She squeezed once more and then let go because the hairstylist needed her to stay still, and I went back out to the venue to handle the next thing that needed handling. At 5 o'clock, my sister walked down the garden aisle in her $4,200 dress, toward a man who loved her, under floral arches that Donna had spent 3 days constructing, in a venue I had found and booked and managed for 14 months. She was radiant. I mean this without irony or bitterness. She was genuinely, completely radiant, the version of herself she had been trying to reach all along. And I stood at the altar in my blue silk dress and watched her walk toward it and felt proud in a way that was real and deep and uncomplicated. Some things can be true at the same time. The reception was everything it was supposed to be. The barn looked exactly as I had imagined it during those 11 visits to Donna. Warm light, full flowers, the long tables draped in linen, the candles lit as the evening came in. The food was excellent. I had known it would be. The band was excellent. Ryan had done one thing well. 200 people ate and drank and danced and laughed and said to each other in the way people say things at weddings, "Isn't this beautiful? Isn't this perfect? Aren't they wonderful?" Together I sat at the head table. To my left was Brianna. To my right was Ryan's best man, a pleasant man named Todd who worked in finance and had strong opinions about golf. I ate my dinner. I talked to Todd about something I cannot now remember. I watched my sister glow at the center of the room she had always imagined and felt again that complicated pride. At some point near the end of dinner, the band paused and the microphone was handed to Ryan's best man for his speech, which was exactly the kind of best man speech you would expect. Affectionate, slightly too long, with one joke about a thing that happened in college that everyone at the groom's table found funnier than anyone else. People laughed in the right places. Ryan looked embarrassed in an endearing way. Brianna looked at him the way she had always looked at him. Then the microphone passed to Ryan. He stood up. He was composed in a way I had not expected. Ryan is not typically a formal person, and public speaking is not his natural habitat, but he had clearly prepared and the preparation showed. He looked good. He looked happy. He looked like a man who understood, at least in this moment, the magnitude of what he was standing inside. He said Brianna's name first. He talked about her with a simplicity and a directness that I thought was genuinely lovely. Not flowery, not performed, just honest. He said she was the person who made him want to be better, which is the right thing to say, and he said it like he meant it. Then he turned to the task of thanking people. He thanked his parents first. His father, who had been dealing with health issues for 2 years, had managed to be there, and Ryan's voice changed slightly when he acknowledged this, a tightening that told you what it meant to have him in the room. His mother pressed a hand to her chest. People murmured. He thanked his groomsmen. He went through them individually, which was the right instinct, with a specific memory or quality for each. People appreciated this. You could feel the warmth in the room. He thanked his college roommate who had flown in from Portland. He thanked his high school football coach, which produced some laughter and some surprised murmuring from people who had not known the coach was there. He thanked Kayla, Brianna's best friend, and the other bridesmaid for being the hype woman Brianna needed through all of this. He thanked a woman named Cheryl from his office for her advice. Cheryl, visibly delighted, pressed her hands together near her chin. He thanked the band. He thanked Donna, the florist, by name. He had clearly been briefed on this, had specifically sought out her name to include. Donna, at a table near the back, looked pleased. He looked at my parents. He thanked them for raising Brianna and for welcoming him into the family. My mother cried a little. My father put his arm around her. He made a small general gesture toward everyone who helped make this day possible. He looked at Brianna. He said, "And to my wife." And the room erupted in the particular warmth that word produces at a wedding, the first-time use of wife landing exactly the way it is designed to land, and he finished his sentence and raised his glass and everyone raised theirs. I raised mine. The applause lasted about 30 seconds. People settled. The band came back in softly. Brianna stood up then and took the microphone because she had also prepared something. I had not known she was going to speak. I sat very still. She thanked Ryan's family. She thanked her own parents, her mother specifically, and her voice broke a little in a way that made everyone near me make soft sounds of tenderness. She thanked Kayla. She said something about the venue, about how it was the most beautiful place, and she had always dreamed of somewhere like this. She did not say how it had been found. She did not say who had driven out here the first time, alone, on a Tuesday evening after work to evaluate whether it was worth showing her. She looked around the room. She said, "I am the luckiest woman in the world, surrounded by the people I love most." She raised her glass. The room raised theirs. I raised mine. My name had not been said, not by Ryan. Not by Brianna, not in the general gesture toward everyone who helped, not in the thanks for the venue, not in the thanks for the flowers, not anywhere in the approximately 12 minutes of combined thank you speeches that had just occurred. 200 people were celebrating in a room that existed because of $37,000 and 14 months of my life, and I was invisible inside it. I have thought about this moment many times since June, trying to understand what exactly I felt in those seconds after Brianna sat down. It was not one clean emotion. It was several things at the same time, layered over each other the way geological strata are layered. You can identify them separately, but they exist as one surface. There was hurt. Real hurt, the kind that is physical, that you feel in the chest and the throat. I am not going to minimize it or dress it up as something nobler. There was also, underneath the hurt, something that felt almost like confirmation. The arrival of a truth I had been keeping at arm's length for 14 months. The forgetting was not an accident. It was the final expression of something that had been true the whole time, that my contribution had been absorbed so completely into the fabric of the event that it had become invisible. The way a foundation is invisible once the house is built. Nobody thanks the foundation. The foundation is just the ground. I was the ground, and underneath even that, at the deepest layer where the most honest thoughts live, was something that surprised me. It was clarity, a kind of cold, clean clarity that I had not felt in a long time, that burned away the complicated feelings and left something simple and certain in their place. I knew what I was going to do. I did not decide it so much as recognize it, the way you sometimes recognize a decision you have actually already made, somewhere below the level of conscious thought. And the moment of recognition is not a choice, but an arrival. I looked at my sister, laughing with Ryan at the center of the room. I looked at the flowers and the candles and the light. I looked at the 200 people who had been celebrating in this room for 3 hours. I looked at my bag, which was on the back of my chair, which contained the accordion folder I had brought without thinking much about it, the same way I had been carrying it everywhere for 14 months. I reached back and put my hand on it. I sat with it for about 20 minutes. I watched people dance. I talked to my Aunt Susan about something I can no longer remember. I accepted a piece of wedding cake from a passing server and ate it slowly. I watched my mother and father on the dance floor, my mother's head on my father's shoulder in the way she always dances with him. I was calm in a way that was different from my usual calm. My usual calm is the calm of someone who has processed something and made peace with it. This was the calm of someone who has decided. I thought about the alternatives. I could pull Brianna aside during the reception and tell her quietly that I was hurt. This was the emotionally intelligent thing, probably. The adult thing. The thing a therapist would recommend. I could say, "I want you to know I felt invisible up there," and she would feel terrible and probably cry and apologize, and we would hug and it would become a memory we processed together. I thought about what that conversation would produce. She would apologize. She would feel guilty. It would become a story about her forgetting and feeling bad, which would become a story about how she made it right. And somewhere in that retelling, my $37,000 and 14 months would still be in the background, unreferenced, assumed. I did not want an apology. I did not want her to feel guilty. I did not want a conversation that I would have to manage and navigate and make smaller so she did not feel too bad. I wanted something true. I reached back and picked up my bag. I stood up from the table. I smoothed my dress. I walked across the reception room to the small table near the bar where my cousin Trish was sitting with her husband, because Trish is a person I trust completely and because she had been asking me questions for months that told me she had been paying attention. I sat down next to her. "Can I show you something?" I said. Trish looked at me with the alert focus of someone who can tell that what is about to happen matters. I opened my bag. I took out the accordion folder. I set it on the table between us and I opened it. "What is this?" she said. 14 months, I said. I did not give a speech. I did not narrate dramatically. I simply opened the folder and let her look at it. The first section, the venue deposit, the contract, the payment records. The second, the catering. The third, the florist. The fourth, the dress receipt. The fifth through the 10th, everything else in order, dated, documented. Trish is an accountant. She reads financial documents the way other people read novels, with absorption, with comprehension, with the specific attention of someone for whom numbers are a language. She turned pages quietly. She did not say anything for a while. Then she turned to the last page, where I had written the total in the same careful handwriting I had used throughout. She looked at it for a moment. Then she looked at me. "Meg," she said. "I know," I said. "Does anyone know this?" "You know now," I said. She looked at me for another moment. Then she looked around the room, at the flowers, the candles, the tables, the dancing, with an expression that was recalibrating, reassembling what she thought she knew into a new configuration. Her husband leaned in and she showed him the last page. He looked at it, and then at me with an expression I recognized, the expression of someone who has just understood something that changes the whole picture. I did not tell them to show anyone. I did not say, "Please make sure people know." I simply took the folder back and put it in my bag and thanked them and stood up. But Trish is not someone who sits quietly with something she finds unjust. I had known this when I chose her. And within the following 10 minutes I watched, from across the room, as she found my Aunt Susan. I watched Susan's face as she listened. I watched Susan put a hand over her mouth. And then, because information moves through a room the way water moves through a network, finding every path, filling every space, it began to spread. I watched it happen. I stood near the edge of the barn with a glass of something I was not really drinking, and I watched the information move through the room, watched people's expressions shift, watched heads turn slightly in my direction and then correct themselves. I watched my mother stand up from her table and look for me. I watched Ryan's mother lean toward her husband and say something quiet, and then I picked up my bag and I said goodnight to the server who had brought me cake and who looked startled. And I walked out of the barn into the June evening air. My mother found me outside. She had followed me out, moving faster than I had expected, and she came through the barn door and found me standing in the garden where the ceremony had been, in the fading evening light, among Donna's flowers. "Meg," she said it the way she has said my name since I was small, with a weight that carries everything, the love, the concern, the knowledge of who I am. "I'm okay," I said. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" she said. "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at her. She looked genuinely distressed, not performing distress, not managing the situation, but actually troubled in a way that reached her face. I thought about how to answer her honestly. "Because I didn't want it to change the gift," I said. "If I told you what it cost me, it becomes a transaction. I wanted to give it without conditions." But she stopped. "The speech, they didn't—" "No," I said. "They didn't." She was quiet for a moment. She looked back at the barn. "I didn't know the amount," she said. "I knew you were helping. I didn't know." "I know you didn't. I should have asked." This, I thought, was probably the truest thing. Not that Brianna was cruel or Ryan was ungrateful, but that no one had asked because no one had needed to ask, because I had always been the one who handled things and the handling had become invisible. "I know," I said. Brianna came out 10 minutes later. I heard her before I saw her, the sound of her dress and her heels on the stone path, and then her voice saying my name, and then she was there in her wedding dress in the garden, and she was crying. She did not try to explain or justify. She just said, "I'm so sorry." Said it twice. Said it like she meant it, like she had understood something in the last 10 minutes that she had not understood before. I looked at my sister in her wedding dress, crying in the garden of the venue I had found, and I felt something in me soften in the way things soften when you have been holding them rigid for a long time. "I know you are," I said. I forgot, I didn't mean the speech. I had the speech prepared and she pressed a hand to her face. There's no excuse. No, I said. There isn't, she looked at me. I've been terrible about seeing what this actually was for you. Yes, I said. You have, she flinched slightly. Good, I meant it kindly, but I meant it. Ryan came out shortly after. He was less composed than Brianna. Ryan handles guilt by becoming visibly uncomfortable, which is honest if not elegant. He said, Meg, I can't believe I should have made sure. He ran a hand through his hair. Is there anything I can? Ryan, I said. I don't need you to fix it tonight. Tonight is your wedding. Go back inside. He looked at me with an expression of gratitude mixed with something like shame. Thank you, he said, for everything. I should have said it in there. You should have, I said. Yes, inside, the information had continued moving. My cousin Marcus came out to find me and stood next to me for a while without saying anything, which was the right thing to do. Kayla came out and was more vocal about it. I had no idea. How did none of us know? That's insane, Meg. And I appreciated her outrage even as I found I did not need it. My Aunt Susan came out and hugged me for a long time without saying anything, which was also the right thing to do. My father found me last. He stood beside me in the garden and put his arm around my shoulders, the way he has done since I was 7 years old, and he said simply, "You are a remarkable person." And then he was quiet. That was the right thing too. It is October now. 4 months since the wedding. Brianna and I have talked, really talked, the way we have not talked in a long time. She called me the day after the wedding and we were on the phone for 2 hours, and it was not a comfortable 2 hours, but it was an honest one. She said things I had needed to hear. I said things I had needed to say. We are not fully through it yet. These things take time, longer than 2 hours or 4 months, but we are through some of it. She asked me during that call why I had brought the folder to the wedding. I thought about this. I didn't plan to do anything with it, I said. I just always had it with me. It was a habit. And Trish, I trusted her, I said. And I was tired. I was tired of being invisible. A long pause. I made you invisible, she said. You did, I said. So did I. It's both. Here's what I have understood. In the 4 months since June, the folder was not a weapon. I want to be clear about this because I think it is easy to read that moment, sitting down next to Trish, opening the folder, letting the information out, as a calculated act of revenge. It was not. It was something simpler and older than revenge. It was the decision to be seen I had given for 14 months without demanding acknowledgement, and I still believe that is the right way to give. But there is a difference between not demanding acknowledgement and actively making yourself smaller so that other people are more comfortable. I had been doing the second thing for a long time, in the wedding, yes, but also before it, and probably after, in ways I am still learning to see. The folder was not a weapon. It was just the truth, laid on a table, allowed to exist. I think about something my mother said when she found me in the garden, a thing she said quietly, almost to herself. I should have asked. That is the thing I keep returning to. Not the forgetting, which I have largely made my peace with. People forget what they have not been asked to remember, and I had not asked. But the not asking. The way my reliability had become a wall between me and being known, the responsible one, the capable one, the one you can count on. These are not bad things to be. I do not want to be otherwise, but I have learned in the 4 months since June that being counted on does not have to mean being taken for granted, and that the difference between the two is something you have to teach people, not by confrontation, not by withholding, but by the quiet, difficult act of letting yourself be seen. I have started saving again. It will take longer now, 5 or 6 years as I calculated last March. I have my spreadsheet updated with a new target date. The house is still out there. The foundation is still being built. And I know something now that I did not know in March of last year, when I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet for my sister's wedding. I know where my floor is. I know the point below which I will not go, the point at which being generous stops and being invisible begins. I know what my labor is worth and what my time is worth and what my 8 years of careful savings were worth. And I know that these things deserve to be spoken, at least to myself, at least in the private accounting of a document that tells the truth. The folder is still in my desk drawer. I have not thrown it away, not because I need it as evidence, not because I am still building a case, because it is mine. It is $37,000 and 14 months and every Tuesday drive and every Thursday evening and every vendor call and every line of a spreadsheet, all of it, all of me, documented and real and true in a way that does not require anyone else's memory to remain true. I paid for my sister's wedding. I know what that cost, and I know now what I am worth. That is enough. That is more than enough. That is everything.